Hi, World History class. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 5, Section 1, talking a little bit about the early Greeks. Okay, to complete this set of notes, you're going to need your packet, and you're going to need to find the first page, and we're going to do numbers 1 through 13. As you follow along, you need to write in the information that you need. When this video concludes, you have another link within your email to a TED Ed video. You are to watch that video and to answer the questions on a Google form. And all of that will be provided within your email. So let's begin. We're going to talk about Greece and why Greece is so great. And on the screen here is a map of the country of Greece. And as you can see here, Greece is comprised of a lot of islands. And in a sense, that's kind of a good and bad thing. In terms of like forming city-states, a lot of these little islands were somewhat isolated, and it allowed for these cities to actually form their own kind of like forms of government. And it also caused them to be very competitive, especially when it comes time to setting up trade alliances. So in section 1, we're going to talk about probably the two of the earliest civilizations here that are found in ancient Greece. As you can see here, this is kind of a modern map of Europe. Greece, if you can follow my cursor that's kind of dancing around in circles, is kind of in the southeastern portion of the continent of Europe. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your first few items. We're going to talk about the Myonians and the Mycenaeans because they were the two of the first ancient peoples that are going to emerge out of Greece. So the Myonians and the Mycenaean cultures are alike in that they were both advanced civilizations based on trade around the Aegean Sea. And as you can see here on this map, this again is Greece, and we have the Adriatic Sea. To the south here, we'd probably have what some people would probably label as the Mediterranean Sea, and then kind of towards the east between what is kind of mainland Greece and what would be a little bit of Turkey here is the Aegean Sea. The Myonians lived on the island of Crete, which is way down here. Okay, historians know that they had formed a system of writing, yet for the most part, historians still cannot read it. They haven't found a way to interpret it. One of the things that we know about the Myonians is probably this creature that we see here, the Minotaur, which you might hear a little bit about in some of the mythology that comes out of ancient Greece. We know that the Minotaur is kind of half man, half bull, and kind of a force to be reckoned with. Again, you know, our Myonians, they're from Crete. One of their better known cities is Knossos, and you know, there are tales of minotaurs that supposedly were living in that vicinity. You can read into that as much as you'd like. We're going to also talk about the Mycenaeans. They live a little bit closer to what would be mainland Greece. Mycenae is here. I mentioned before the Myonians, they live down here in Crete. The Mycenaeans are considered to be the first Greeks because they spoke a form of the Greek language. Okay, and we mentioned before that the Myonians, they had a written language, but for the most part, we really can't interpret it. So, in a sense, there's probably a little bit more that leans towards the Mycenaeans as far as kind of giving us a little bit more perspective of where these folks came from. The downfall of the Mycenaeans is attributed to drought, famine, and invasion from outsiders, and a collapse of trade. And some of that is responsible because of war that happened between these Mycenaean cities. During the Dark Age of the Mycenaeans, and I kind of want to mention what the Dark Age means. Dark Age is like a time when you lose all of your advancements. So you kind of forget about your system of writing and your government kind of falls apart. Anyway, they had lost their writing. and that became a critical problem because they could not communicate and keep accurate records. All right. The common characteristics of most Greek city-states is that they had a high area called a polis or acropolis. Polis is kind of a fancy name for city. And Acropolis, if you think about it as a rock where the city um, is kind of the standard as far as building, your public buildings. In a sense, this is the Acropolis that you would find in the city of Athens, in the Temple of Athena. This Acropolis, in a sense, is built up on a hill of rock, and it provided a sense of protection. If there had been an invasion, this is where a lot of the city folks from Athens would go in case they would have to defend their city. The Acropolis or the polis would contain the temples, the marketplace, and typically it was the home of their political system. The birthplace of democracy happened in the city-state of Athens, and as we go through chapter 5, we'll talk a little bit more about that. The Acropolis was built on higher ground than the rest of the city because of its importance in the cultural and society, but it also housed the temples to the gods and provided that place for public ceremonies. And in a sense, it was elevated because of its importance. Sparta. And by the way, tomorrow we're going to talk a lot more about Sparta, but the Spartans placed a very huge emphasis on its preparedness for war. And tomorrow, when we talk about the Spartans a little bit more in depth, we're going to hear a little bit more in depth about how their culture was set up to promote warfare and good soldiers. In Sparta, the Helots, they farmed and performed a lot of the manual labor for the Spartan civilians. And part of that is that the citizens of Sparta were too busy preparing for war, and they had to have somebody that would take care of all the other details. And that's what the Helots did. King Lycurgus, who was kind of the king of the Spartans, he had a system of training boys that would be very harsh or hard on young children, but very effective in creating very good foot soldiers. Foot soldiers are the soldiers who travel by foot. Today we would kind of consider them to be kind of like the infantry. All right, rounding the bend here. Every 4 years, citizens of various city-states would come together for an event called the Olympics, where athletes would compete and honor their gods. And in a sense, this was a great way to promote your city-state and how wonderful your citizens were. The fact that Greek gods were flawed and unpredictable helped the Greek people relate to them because these gods seemed more human. Greek mythical heroes also provided examples of virtues and strength. All right, please check your email. You have a link to a TED Ed video that's going to talk a little bit more about the Olympics. Have a great day.